Good morning and welcome to Sports Days Live on Comcast Channel 26, also streamed on our Facebook page. I'm your host, Ed Nunez, along with producer Alden Iwani. Our very special guest today is former Abq High head coach and former Abq High basketball player Ron Estrada. His father, Abe, the legendary Coach Estrada, legendary assistant at Abq High, also the former head man at Rio Grande High School, coached with the Thunderbirds with Michael Cooper in the G League, helped the Thunderbirds win a championship there, also coached at the WNBA level. Passed away September 30th, 2024. Coach, great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You know, we've been, I was there at the service when, they laid your father to rest. And I got to tell you a story, and I told you this last February. Your brother Henry wheeled him into the St. Pius gym, and Henry called it therapy. I've known your brother and you played against my brother Danny, and I've known Henry and you and the family for years. And, Henry called it, therapy for Dad. That's what he said. And I remember going over to Coach and saying, he's not going to remember, I haven't seen Coach in a long time. And as soon as I came up, Ed Nunez used to play for Highland. Boom, just like that, and big smile. Talk to us a little bit about the impact of, the passing away of your father, what a life he lived. And, we've got a lot to talk about here, but talk a little bit about his, final, you did mention you had that event here at the hotel for him a couple months ago. Talk to us a little bit about that.
You bet. Matter of fact, I saw that ProView Network where he was at the game that day there watching. And that was a heck of a game that I think Pius won in the end there. But as far as my father was gentle, he was kind, wise. We miss the family and a lot of his fans, players, everybody that associated with Dad. His uniqueness as far as how he carried himself, but most of all his peacefulness. I always hear comments about how Dad was whatever he mentioned or shared, it's made an impact. It stuck with him. And there was people all the time over at the house, all from all other programs, Ed, from other that played against us. There'd be Dave Shaw would be over there, or Mark Felix would be coming out, or there was people who would come by all the time, and it was evident in August they wanted to do a wedding anniversary. We did it for my mother and my father, and we also wanted to invite some of the other people that stayed in touch with Dad, and we felt that the players would want to see him. So Coach Holzman was there, Mary Lois was there. The turnout was unbelievable, and it was, for an example, it was good to see Phil Edmond was one of the first ones to be there. Larry Williams, Rick Hidon, Arnold Senna, on and on.
Bobby Sweet, I think, was there.
Stevie Rogers. But I think the one that was really also nice to see was watching Marvin and Michael Cooper together. And they both had great stories, too, as well as everybody
Marvin
else.
Johnson, the former great Lobo.
Right.
One of the things that so people don't know, Michael Cooper, when your father, the funeral at Fatima, Michael Cooper right there in the front row as a pallbearer. We'll get to his impact with Coach Estrada. But what I want to ask you about, and you sent these great pictures, we're going to put them up in the second part of the show. Talk of the Lordsburg part. He came from Lordsburg. There's some great. I love old pictures because they bring us back to a time. Seeing my mother and my father in old pictures. They're both gone now, but I can always look at those pictures and remember. Talk to us a little bit about the early Abe Estrada that a lot of people may not have known. He was in the Navy. He played in Lordsburg. Played football. Some of those pictures. Your father was tough, man. Defensive-minded guy. I remember my early memories of watching Abq High at the pit. They're always there. Was seeing your dad up and down that sideline. Yeah. Man, and the players that I've talked to, and I know a lot of them. Played a lot against a lot of them. Swear by him. Again, all due respect to Coach Holzman. Coach Holzman had some great assistants, and your dad was one of them. But talk to us a little bit about the early Coach Abe Estrada that people may not know about. The pictures in Lordsburg in the Navy. I'm like, wow, look at this. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'll see if I can do it in a nutshell for you. But one thing that got my dad going was when he was a seventh grader, the 1939 team, Lordsburg, was playing in the state championship game and won it. And in those days, there wasn't TV, but there was one family, the Altoona family, there in the neighborhood that had a radio. So they were all around that radio. Just imagine, who knows, 20, 30 people in that living room listening to that state tournament. So it rubbed off on the kids there. So then they started playing there in the lots there around there, at my grandma's. And Dad used to say that, for example, basketball, they made a coffee can, they put it up on a post, they used an old tennis ball, and I said, Dad, how could you do 5 against 5? He goes, no, son. We'd have maybe 15, 20 guys playing with one tennis ball with a coffee can on that. But I got to let you know this too. Dad, there was 5 guys. There was a Father Abe at St. Joseph's there in Lordsburg. Took 5 guys and he took them to tournaments in El Paso. Took them to tournaments in Silver City and in Las Cruces there when they were 7th and 8th graders. They would pack a lunch. They were going an old Ford, 1947, 48 Ford, little 4-speed. There down the highway, and then got Dad, and that's how he got that Father Brigade got them interested going in athletics. And of course, Dad went on as a freshman. That team he started at the right wing, went on in 1949. They won the district championship. There was 16 teams in that District 4. And there was no classes. It was just one class. So there was a class over on the Hobbs side, another class over on the other side of the state, and another class up on the other top near Farmington. They all came together. They were the number 1 seed. They won it that year. Came up to Albuquerque, stayed here at the Dianza Hotel, and then they ended up playing the Bulldogs in the first round at Carlisle Gym and beat them. They ended up losing to Las Vegas in the semis. That's
such a great story.
But he went on and played football. There was no face guards. Mask, right? There was no face. And
helmets, but no face guards.
And then he went on and he ran track. He ran track there, ran the mile. But one of the most fascinating stories, if not, he enlisted into the Navy, him and his buddies, in June. My Aunt Angela took them all to the bus stop. They left that morning. So that afternoon, they're halfway to Tucson or halfway to San Diego. There's a knock on my grandma's door. There's a gentleman there, and Grandma says, who are you? He goes, well, my name is George McCarty. And she goes, why are you here? She goes, is Armando Estrada here? She goes, no, he's on his way to San Diego, California, and join the Navy. Well, I'm the head men's basketball coach at New Mexico State University. So my dad missed him.
Oh, my goodness. What a story. Yeah, but then your dad...
Dad got the call from Grandma. Coach McCarty, and that year, Ed, that team, New Mexico State, is in the Hall of Fame. Man. That 51 team was the first team to make it to the NCAA tournament.
And of course, this is before texting and phones and right. So, but your dad's service to his country. Talk about that because you showed some pictures of him being in the Navy, and what, he's a proud veteran, right? He's a proud veteran. Talk a little bit about.
Well, back in those days, everybody was that patriotism joined, and right. They all my uncles were one was a Marine, some were Air Force, some were Army. Dad joined the Navy, enlisted, and he went in there, and he was on an aircraft carrier. He was a gunner, so when the planes would come in, he was beneath there protecting those planes coming in, and when they got to Yokosuka, Japan. They had what they called the United States Naval Fleet Activities, and they had a conference called the Central Command Conference. So they had like the Air Force, the Army, the Navy. So they provided athletic programs. So they had a football program. Well, if you look at the rosters on Dad's, there was like 50 guys on there from Virginia, New York, Florida, Oregon. He was out there by himself, a little old guy, a guy from Lordsburg,
New Mexico.
Made the team, made captain, was a wide receiver on offense, and then was a defensive end on defense, played both ways. And then it came to basketball. He started at the right wing. There is a guard, a 6'2" guard, and I sent you a shot of him. His uniforms, they took really, really good care of them. Dad said it was like playing for the pros or playing for me. And there was a lot of players that were former All-Americans that had enlisted and left the college ranks to play in that league. And it was an unbelievable experience.
What a story. I'm trying to wrap my head around this, and I'm missing that call with the Aggies, but look where he ended up. Tell us a little bit. We got 30 minutes, and there's so much to talk about. How did he end up? You got some great, playing experience there. 2 ways, by the way. No face mask. Imagine how tough that was then. Players are protected more now, but back then, man, right? We know that. that's a time where you get slugged in the face, right? No penalties.
Got a story for you.
Go ahead. Well, I got to hear it. Go ahead.
They're playing New Year's Day for the championship against the Army. Okay, now they had that was a heck of a team. Their coach was a head coach at Drake University, and the assistant was an assistant at Notre Dame. In that game there, Dad injured his finger. And if you ever got to in talking with Dad, if you ever saw that right finger, it was crooked. Well, if you see in one of the pictures there, it's taped. Well, he didn't know, but that finger was broken. It was broken, and he still went back in there and played through that game with that broken finger. Nowadays, boy, they'll pull you immediately. He didn't know, but the doctor at the end said, you know what, you're pretty lucky because you could have lost that finger.
I can only imagine what that finger looked like the rest of his life. I mean, we've all got fingers from playing, but right, we've all got some.
Ed, and I got to let you know, you're going to see if it's a shot I sent you. It's a shot where he's pursuing a halfback in that championship game, and you can see the tape on that. But that picture made the front page of the Stars and Stripes that went all over the Far East that week.
And we know so much about his career as an assistant at Albuquerque High, the former head man at Rio Grande, coaching with. We'll get into all of that, but this is a great backdrop that people didn't know about. I didn't know. I didn't know that, and I've known about your dad. Utmost respect for him. Who doesn't? Every time, a lot of Albuquerque High players at the service, Larry Williams, John Darling, Jerome Padilla, Davey LaCour, who I love to death, Glenn Lucero, a bunch of them were there. Michael Cooper, there's you and your brother, of course, and then the nephews that he had grandsons that he had coached as well. Such an impact. Tell us a little bit about how he started getting into the coaching part of it, because we'll get into that. How he ended up at Albuquerque High, and then the former head man at Rio. Talk to us a little bit about what was it that led him into coaching.
Well, he had great mentors. First of all, his mother, Grandma Della, my grandmother, told all her children to get an education, to get an education. So he believed in that. I was looking at his report card before I came. He only missed one day of school his freshman year, just one day. And that was one, the teachers, but his Coach Provert. Coach Provert was his football and basketball and track coach in high school. And that really made an impact on him. And then, of course, Coach Reed, his football coach there in the Navy, and then his basketball coach, and then all his mentors all through, as he was going, Dr. Brenly. He always talks about Dr. Brenly at Texas A&I University, Ed, and how he made an impact on him on going into education and working with those athletes. And, of course, you look at the mentors going beyond. He went on to Coronado Elementary. Dr. Brenly had a friend up here at New Mexico Highlands University and told Dr. Brenly, look, they're hiring in New Mexico. And at that time, in the late 50s, it was one of the highest paying in the state. So Dad packed up, took us, me and Henry were there, we're the only ones here at that time. We came in our little station wagon with Mom, and we lived over here on 7th Street, and that's where Dad got into Coronado Elementary. And then from there, was able to move on to Washington, and then that's where he won those back-to-back, lost one game in 2 years with the Washington Raiders. With Albert Salas and Bonnie Lucero and those guys there. And I sent you that article where they
we got it.
Caught the attention again of another person that made an impact on a lot of us was Jim Holzman. Mm-hmm. And then you keep going down the line. John Wooden, he believed it, Mike Krzyzewski,
right.
Gary Colson, you saw the pictures.
I did.
Dave Bliss,
they will too, everybody will.
Michael Cooper, all those made impacts on Dad and, got him, that's where it just created that total commitment. He wanted to be part of that athletic
of course, the other guy that was
experience.
at your dad's service, I don't want to forget about him. He's a very good friend of yours, and a friend of mine too, Roscoe Locke, former Highland player Oscar Huber was also there too. Oscar's a good friend of mine. Highland and Albuquerque High, your dad part of that championship staff in '77 when Albuquerque High beat Highland 54-49. What a game that was. We'll get to all that in the second half of the show. We're going to take a quick break, Coach. When we come back, we'll see all these pictures that you have after these messages on the sports desk.
red zone. Now, it's going to be a big handoff. Cam Dyer keeps it himself and runs right into the end zone for the touchdown.
Clock going, unofficial clock. 38, kicking it into space, in the area. Nice job. Kick, good. It's gold. St. Pius gold, if you will. The big shot down the right sideline. He intercepted. Is he in bounds?
He certainly is.
He is.
The snap, here comes Posa, and he's brought down.
He's going to have that in the back of his mind this time.
Oh,
And this time, there's no doubt. Griggle swallowed up for the safety there. Unabated to the quarterback. Joseph Garcia comes in and makes the play.
Here it comes again. But he just kind of played a little sugar, little wheel.
Cut. There's Dallas at the 20, 15, 10, touchdown Academy. And Brock was hit as he threw. At least this evening they are. Takahashi, play action pass. Airs it out, open, caught. Oh, what a catch. What an amazing catch by Jace Pitt.
And it's going to be a lot. He's
Always got blocked on the right side. 40, 35, 30, 25, 20. Holloway is gone for a touchdown. We said he was due for it. There it is.
yeah,
Dyer missed a formation. Snap, break hand off the throw, left side. And Jaden Parsons down the sideline. Green grass in front of him. Will he get there? 30, 20, 10. Touchdown, Bears.
Salazar's first made and attempted field goal. This is fielded at the 20-yard line and then handed off there. Look at all this space, midfield and not looking back. Sideline and gone, maybe down at the half-yard line. Touchdown! Ochoa takes it all the way back into pay dirt.
Welcome back to the Sports Desk live on Comcast Channel 26, also streamed on Facebook. I'm your host, Ed Nunez. Our very special guest, former Abq High boys head basketball coach Ron Estrada, also former Abq High player in 1975, the son of the late, great Abe Estrada, who passed away on September 30th, 2024. Coach, what a discussion in the first half, and we needed, 3 shows, and fortunately we're going to get some great pictures up here in a second that you sent. But going back, the first half, just re-wrap it real quick. I mean, Coach, a star in Lordsburg, and that story about listening to the radio at 20 people. Can you imagine that? Somebody told me that about my grandfather. He grew up in Sanholm. Andrade, Mr. Andrade, Mario Andrade's dad.
Right.
So told me one time, your grandfather was the only one with the radio in the neighborhood. So it brought, I only knew my grandfather for 3 years, but it brought back gosh. So those kind of stories are, you never forget them. Your father was an amazing man. He really was. The service to the country, 2 ways on football, a man's man. And I said that about my father, a man's man. They never complained. They did what they had to do, and they served their country, and they served it proudly. So that's the a little drop for your dad that people may not have known about. They know him as the coach. But let's get into that. You said he started at Coronado, La Washa, as they call it, a championship there with Albert Salas, who was a member of the Bulldog team in '72. Bonnie Lucero, had a lot to do with Old Town, developing kids there.
Tommy Maestas.
The late Tommy Maestas, one of the greatest Bulldog guards. He and Richard Jenkins passed away in about months of each other, I think.
Yep.
So both of them great. But your dad had a lot to do with coaching a lot of great Bulldog greats. And, it doesn't do us justice. If I mention one, I got to mention 30 of them.
It's
but
right.
part of the 71 championship team, and I remember Coach Metters, the late Coach Metters, took me to his house, and we watched that tape 3 times, man. And I remember at the end, man, Hobbs, the one guy, James Ward, I think, was so mad that they lost. But because Hobbs had beaten Albuquerque High the day before. Talk a little bit about that 71 championship, the Iron Five, the whole thing. Coach Estrada, a huge part of that. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, you gotta, in that one, of course, is Coach Holzman, Coach Holzman's organization, and Coach Holzman's knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But then he also had a gentleman by the name of Jess Miranda.
Heard about
Coach
him.
Miranda, and his son Phil played for Highland.
Yes.
And Coach Miranda brought in the 1-2-2 zone. Brought in that 1-2-2 zone, and that's where you were able to keep that 5 going there. And, one thing that people, especially the Bulldogs there that played on that floor, remember, is the year before, Hobbs wasn't so kind to the Bulldogs there in the finals there in New Mexico State in 70. So they remembered that when they took it out there onto that floor. And, that's, again, they all had a unbelievable, if there was ever a time to have a great game, now was that time. And, Rick Clark and Ron Padrell inside, and then Alvin inside on that rebound triangle. And, of course, Paulie and Phil out there on the outlet coming down. I think Phil had 15 that night, and Paul had 25. That's 40 of that 80. And then, of course, that defense holding Hobbs,
Which your dad had a lot to do with.
With that zone. And then Dad came in and coached the way he played. That's where Dad got that from. He coached the way he played. And if you watch him, and people remember on the sidelines, he couldn't sit down. He couldn't sit because the energy. But, you got to give credit to Coach Holzman, because Coach Holzman loved Albuquerque High so much that when he looked at Coach Estrada or an assistant of that nature, and he knew the response that he was getting from the kids out there on the floor, anything that would benefit Albuquerque High. That's where Coach Holzman and Dad, were able to work together and be remembered.
A great
in that
team.
regard.
There's some great pictures, and we'll get to those. Armando Estrada, wow. I love old pictures. We'll have to talk while we do this. Okay, so he coached also part of the 77 championship team, and Tony Gutierrez, Trini Salas, Frankie O'Gean. What a championship game that was, and they won 54-49. Albuquerque High, 16,000 in the pit. I was there. I was still a freshman at Pius. Then I would transfer to Hyde, but I remember that game. I had a great seat for that. So Coach was your dad was a part of that, and a huge part of the staff there at Albuquerque High. But I want to change gears a little bit though. He did take a job at Rio Grande as the head man there. There's going to be look at that great picture. There's going to be he was the head man of Rio Grande. You know what got them? They had success under him where they hadn't had success before. I mean, Pete Gallegos was a great coach. Billy Lopez, they had some great coaches there. But your dad took them to another level.
Well, look, here's
coach
something.
there with him, I think.
Oh yeah, here's something. The Rio Grande program was a blessing in disguise. No matter where Dad would have gone, okay, because he had applied at Cibola, he had applied at Sandia, he applied at Highland, okay. But here's something about where Dad knew and we knew about Rio Grande. Rio Grande had already been recognized for the athletes that they had. Let's look at the 60s, and you learned that, and you knew that as growing up. Bob Fullerton played for the Lobos. Dwight Hooton, Charlie Ramirez. That team went to the state tournament in 67 or 68. Had they beaten Carlsbad that first round, Ed, they might have won the state championship. Then you go and you look at a guy by the name of Jerry Stalin. Then you guys got like Art Sanchez or Frank Valencia, or you got Jerry Stalin averaged 30 points a game. There was a string about Mark Rott, Steve Smith,
Mark Rott just passed away.
Billy Lopez, okay, Keith Laidler. You look at Leroy Grego. You know what I mean? Matty Romero.
Richard
then you
Rogers,
got Monty
Richard
Gresham,
Rogers,
Monty Skip Watley. And then you keep going on into when Dad came in. There was athletes there in Rio Grande, and then Pete Gallegos did a heck of a job with those guys.
Yes, he did.
Thank God Edward Hunt hit that shot off the glass in the semifinals of my senior year. Or Rio would have been in the city finals that year. But there was already There was already
There's a
the
good foundation in
tradition
place, yes,
right there,
yes.
and then we
But I
and
think
it
Coach
gets
Estrada,
pro-
did help take them to another level. He did. He did.
He had, well, he had that group, and they, they responded, and they proved they went to that level where they brought it, where they continued it. They continued it as that tradition.
Yes,
And,
they did. And I thought he did a great job. There's going to be a great picture of when he takes the job there. I thought he did a great job there. We can't let this go without saying this, right? Because there's so much. Talk about he and Michael Cooper. He had your dad helping him coach at the G League with the Thunderbirds, helping him win a championship, helped him coach in the WNBA. Michael Cooper in the front row as a pallbearer. That's the impact he had on on Michael Cooper. Some would argue the greatest Lobo ever. Some might argue. Cooper's definitely up there for sure. Talk a little bit about their relationship.
Well, my brother Henry, in 76, in 1976, him and Kid Carson,
Yes.
Pat King was coaching the JV with Norm Ellenberger for the Lobos. So they got in there, and that's when Marvin Johnson and Michael Cooper came in, and that group came in, and Henry, that's where the friendship, the relationship began. And then Michael would come over to the house, and then Dad would offer when Michael needed to go to California, would take care of his belongings. So the relationship began there, and then as it kept going, and Michael went on, Dad and Henry and Mom kept in touch with Mike, and Mike kept in touch, and then they started following him with all those Laker great runs, and where they would stay at the same hotel. And then there's even stories when Michael was coaching with the Sparks. Michael would give up his suite, and Mom and Dad would be able to stay in that room, and Mike would get another room, and that's how strong the relationship became. Now, in Joey Montano, Joey got together with Michael and Dad, and they brought to the community the Coop Camp. You saw the picture of that. There was over 400 to 450, and a lot of athletes went through that in the 80s, and what a phenomenal experience that was. 450, and yet Michael would bring in guys like Dominic Wilkins, Karl Malone, Tim Hardaway,
Magic. I thought he brought
Magic, Byron Scott. I mean, those
James
guys
Worthy.
you should have seen the crowds, especially on Friday, that last day when it was All-Star Day and Award Day. But then but just the competition, because he would bring in the California coaches, so there was a lot of blend between New Mexico and California playing during those summer camps. So then that was 13 years of success, and then Mike went away for a little bit. Dad continued to go and invited Dad out to do those off-season drills with the Sparks. So Dad would be out there and do those defensive fundamentals and teach him those skills.
Yeah.
And then finally, with the Thunderbirds, went out there and helped out with him and Joey Araharj's son.
Think about this too. Coop just named to the inducted to the NBA Hall of Fame, 5-time champion. That tells you a lot. Coop played under one of the greatest coaches with the Lakers. With Pat Roddy, coach here with Norm Ellenberger. Real quick, Coach, we got about 30 seconds left. The impact of your dad, and you can't wrap it up in 30. I'm sorry, but tell us just what his impact was on so many people, because it was a lot.
He was a people person. He was approachable. He loved people. He wanted to pass on what he learned. And one thing that the players always tell me, that he was an encourager. When you got into the huddle with my dad, and that's the way he was as an adult, and you can do it. Keep it going.
Motivator.
You can do it. Keep it going. And at the induction ceremony, Jim Williams was there. And Jim Williams says, you know what, Ron? He even told me that on the floor. I said, well, you're playing for El Dorado. He said he was even doing, he was even telling him, keep it going, Jim.
Yeah.
He was even doing that to the opponents.
Let's end with that. He was inducted in the Abq High Sports Hall of Fame, and so we want to make sure we talk about that. And Jim Williams, the former Lobo, and others. He had such an impact on people. Former Abq High head coach Ron Estrada, also former Abq High player in 1975. Thank you so much for joining us today about your memories of your late father, Abe Estrada, who passed away on September 30th, 2024. We sure
Thank you very much, too, Ed.
You bet. For producer Alden Iwani, I'm Ed Nunez. We'll see you next week on the Sports Desk.